Yeah.
And
It's
obviously,
really nice.
if I just plug in, there'd be like 1 or 2 Rise of the Valkyries and a Swarm of Tomorrow.
Train available.
You
Yeah,
know,
right
there are at least 8 or more maps you can pick from to build.
Heroscape.org is definitely a wonderful. I have never even clicked the maps tab. So yeah, this is really cool.
It's a super useful tool, not only to find what maps to build, but you know, when you go find a map to build and you finally play on it, you can kind of understand of why it's built the way it is. I know when I first went into the Heroscape, you know, community and was building maps and wanted to share the maps that I've made, and I joined a tournament, a contest. All the different groups hold contests. I mean, they haven't held one in a while. The last one I think was for AOA. You know, back during the HasLab campaign. But even so, like, you know, I had joined the contest and submitted a map, or at least a couple maps or whatever. And I got a lot of different, you know, feedback, and I'm like, okay. You know, I'm starting to learn and construct. I'm like, I'm very visual. Like, I'm trying to make a beautiful map that's also functional. And so there are some features, like, for example, like stacking castles. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to ever stack castles, but I was like, I wanted to make a city map that where you felt like when you play this map, you felt like you were in the middle of a city and you're on the street. And so I wanted to stack castles, and they were like, nah, there's no reason for that. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the immersion though. Like, if you just put one level of castles, you know, you're like, okay, it's just a castle. But you stack it and you go, oh. At least for me, that's what it was. But it was a huge learning experience. And I think eventually, if you do study enough of these maps, you know, like a couple of puddles I play every so often. I really like that map. It's a good pyramid map, triangle. And I think that's an ARV. Yeah, it's an ARV map. I love the ARV. And a couple months ago, whatever, I was like, wait a minute, I've never seen any of these maps at tournaments. And I don't know why they're never selected. And I play a lot of ARV maps because they have the ARV, the Architect's Realms of Valhalla. They actually have a workshop thread where you can they help you construct maps, which is super useful. They'll give you'll upload your map. They'll give you tips. They'll give you, you know, tricks on how to position it. They won't tell you what to do, but they'll give you they'll ask you specific questions on how for you to think on how to approach a certain problem. And I think that's super, super useful.
Well, the ARV is actually part of what got me into making maps. Because I was watching Sir Heroscape videos, and I was like, oh, this is the best game ever, and like, oh, there's like a community out there that cares about map making. And the ARV was like really popping off when I first joined Heroscapers. And there I had one of my maps inducted into the ARV. Another map of mine like won a contest. It was like the 3 multiplayer frenzy one. But the ARV was really fundamental in bringing me into the map building world. And unfortunately, they haven't really done a whole lot in the past couple of years.
They the Marble Scrolls, which is actually the last that was the contest that I submitted for.
Mm-hmm. And I think they're still, you know, working on stuff behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. But you know, even on some of like the ARV maps, you can kind of see the age on some of them, including my map that got inducted into the ARV. I have my map Grounds of Astra it was one of the first maps that I made, and I'm very grateful for it to have been inducted in there, but it doesn't get a lot of tournament play because the map making meta has shifted a lot since then. And you know, another person that I think you guys should definitely have on at some point is Flash 19. I think he's instrumental part of that shift in map making. He's kind of like the new architect. I think his Heroscape tag is the Frank Lloyd Wright of cartography or something like that. And yeah, he really changed the game with map making, and that maybe goes a little bit into the history side of maps and stuff like that. But yeah, if you want to find like the best maps nowadays, you go to the Wargan Escape. The Wargan Escape, they have, you know,
and before we dive, I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we dive into that, just explain, because we're saying the acronym ARV, but just explain a little bit what that means for a second. Then we'll go into the next acronym of map making as well. But just to the audience who might be listening to this just via audio, I just want to give them a little bit of detail what ARV means before we move on to the next one, if that's okay. Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, the ARV, the Architects of the Realms of Valhalla, they are a map making group that has hosted numerous tournaments in the past, trying to collect new and viable tournament maps for the Heroscape scene. I'm not sure how many maps how many contests they had throughout the years, but they were very regular in their contests, and like I said, very instrumental in getting me involved. But they would basically, host these contests. People would vote on which map was their favorite, and afterwards they would review all the maps, give feedback, and induct X amount of maps into the Architects of the Realms of Valhalla as tournament-worthy maps. Not saying that the ones that didn't get selected for those the tournament viability stats, whatever. Not that those aren't playable maps, but these were the best maps that came from those competitions.
The best, basically. What's considered the best. And this was founded by Sir Heroscape?
Yes, Sir Heroscape, and I can't remember the exact list of judges, but I know Big Bullfrog was a part of it.
Okay.
So is Flash. I know that Sheep was a part of it as well. Heroscape for 2010 is what he used to go by.
Okay.
But yeah, these are all, really good maps, and maybe some of them are a little bit more dated than others, mine included. But they are still, I think, pretty decent maps, and you probably won't go wrong with playing on them.
All right. Well, let's see here. The next acronym then, and let me get this here. WOS, right? War Grounds of Escape. Yes. Now, this is a more actually no, this one has been, I think this one's older. Looks like Doc set this one up 2015, correct?
Yes and no. So the War Grounds Escape was a predecessor of the Architects of the Realms of Valhalla, but it went dormant after the first 3 inductions into the War Grounds Escape, and then was resurrected recently with the help of Mike OEAO and other members of the mapmaking community, Doc included, obviously. And since then, the War Grounds Escape has kind of been the I guess the group that has really stepped up and provided a showcase for the best tournament maps that we have, and their process is a little bit different from the ARV.
Just bring up that seemed interesting. This one.
Yeah, Venom is an ARV, or is a War Grounds Escape map. It's also an ARV map, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I think it is. But Venom. Yeah. So basically, like Wargan Escape, anyone can nominate a map to the Wargan Escape. It doesn't have to go through a contest beforehand and all that. It's basically whoever wants to submit a map can. The only qualifications a submission has to make is that it has to have appeared in 2 competitive tournaments with 6 or more players. It has to. It doesn't. There's no strict terrain requirements, but there are conventions that us mapmakers follow.
Now, what do you mean by strict restrictions? Are you talking about like you can't only just use, let's say, a Rise of the Valkyrie, Swarm of the Marrow, and Forgotten Forest? Like you can just use anything from any terrain as long as it follows a certain set of rules.
Well, you still have to. You can't just have like a map that's completely like sand from like from your entire collection. You have to follow the restrictions of like, however you have to use sets. You can't like split up your pieces and all that stuff.
Okay.
But the only other restrictions really are that you have to have a 24 hex start zone, and if the map contains glyphs, I'm just reading off of their guidelines. If the map contains glyphs, it may designate random glyphs, or it may stipulate specific glyphs. Please specify whether treasure glyphs or power glyphs are intended. Release C3V glyphs may be used. And yeah, the Wargan Escape, they are still active and they're still, inducting maps. I think the most recent induction was Odin Wept. And I played on that map. It's an awesome map. There's a lot of cool stuff in the Wargan Escape, and you can't go wrong with basically any maps here. They all provide interesting gameplay, and even the ones that are I mean I have my own opinions about maps because that's map makers in a nutshell. We all have our own opinions about what makes a map a good map.
What's a hot take? What's a hot take you have? Is it a design thing? Is it like a core concept? It's like I don't like 24s. I wish they were 18. I wish they were 34.
Well, there are things that I have my own like specific rules on top of like the kind of general rules that a lot of map makers follow. One of my pet peeves is like a map where the glyphs are not the same distance from each other from both start zones. That's it's not a hard rule, but like if a map has a glyph that's 7 spaces away from one end of the start zone and 8 spaces away on the other, it's like it just kind of gets under my skin.
You're talking about it has to be balanced, as all things should be.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And I mean,
okay.
You can get away with it with like bilaterally symmetrical maps.
Yeah.
Okay, maps that are not like Odin Wept, where it's like it's symmetrical down the middle of the map.
Right. It's horizontally. I believe that's what it is.
Yes. But yeah, no, the Wargan Escape, they all have it's all great maps. I did nominate a map from the Wargan Escape for removal. But
interesting.
I did not.
Conflict.
I don't want to.
Was it Takala Sunrise?
It was not. It was. And I'm not saying this is not a map that if you put it in a tournament setting, it would be a bad map to play on. I just, in my opinion, believe that it was not like a best of the best of modern maps. I would still play on it. But it's Fulcrum by Dignan, and you know,
that old chestnut.
Fulcrum's a very unique map, and I do think that.
Actually, I kind of like it.
Yeah,
Fulcrum. I like all renditions of Fulcrum.
Although I can see what you mean by, because you're talking about bottlenecks. There's a very obvious bottleneck here.
Yeah, that's the game that you're playing right there. That is the game that you're playing right there. You're fighting for that.
Yep.
Fulcrum is it's a very unconventional competitive map, and I do love that about it. Dignan is one of the most like historic and influential map makers out there, and Fulcrum has been a long time staple of the map making community. It's a good map. I didn't think that it was one of the best of the best, but so
Fulcrum seems like a really good scenario map, maybe not a competitive play map. Just looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, it could very well be. It is a fast map, and it's one of the only competitive maps that does not have glyphs on it. So there's definitely some things that you can take from this, where like, you know, the rules that I mentioned earlier on. You can look at a map like Fulcrum, and you can see how a great designer like Dignan was able to kind of break a lot of those rules. Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, I did nominate it for removal, but I still think that it'll see a lot of tournament play. It's just one of those, you know, it's like Highways and Dieways. It's like one of those maps that just kind of will always be a staple.
And I still like it. But I just, like, based on the knowledge that I've learned in this past hour, I'm just like, wait a second, bottleneck. And that just, you know, because I wouldn't even have thought about that, you know, before we got started with this. But now they've been
Zelwick or Raylan would love this map too.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of, for sure.
Some perches. There's some perches.
Would there be any, like, easy changes to the map you would make to make it better? Or you think it's just...
That's a good question. Actually, Vidar and I did come up with a version of Fulcrum for the last DC tournament.
Is it out there somewhere?
It is. If you go to Vidar's thread, it is a slight update.
Is it just on Heroscapers?
It is on Vidar's map thread. I can send it to you.
I should be able to. Here, hold on a second. I just gotta look at the views.
Well, let me see if it's on .org, because I believe the map images are all broken on Vidar's map thread.
Are there
possibly,
any units coming from AOA that's going to kind of give concern, or like I could see like Awashia being like something map makers have to start paying attention to?
Awashia might be a bit of a problem. Like, I don't think that there will be many considerations given to current figures that aren't already given to figures that do things that are similar to like Awashia or Zenithrax, for example. Like, I think rats kind of do the same thing as Awashia in a way. But it'll be interesting to see how they affect map making. You know, nobody's really putting water at level 4, but they certainly won't be doing that now. There was actually an AOA allowed. There was an OHS season that's currently in playoffs, where they allowed AOA units to be played in, and a lot of the AOA figures are like Awashia is one of the better AOA figures from that tournament, and seeing her results, but none of them break the game quite like Aurelin or Death Reavers. They are very well balanced units, and those designs, you know, were created by some of the best custom designers in the community. So they definitely considered all the problematic things that they could do. So
what was the name of the map we were looking for? Because I like
It's not dark or hot fulcrum.
it is not. In fact, it's on Vidar's map thread. Let me send this to you, Ryan.
Okay.
I will say dark fulcrum is probably in my one of my favorite versions of it.
We can't show hot fulcrum on stream. I'm sorry.
I mean, look, I think hot fulcrum. I really love the layout for it, but yeah, the color combos and the thematics of it, make me want to vomit. So that's a whole different thing. But I would love to rework this with different thematics. I do really enjoy the format for this.
Yeah, they need to make a like a fulcrum family tree thread.
Did you send it to me, Jack,
Bias.
or you sent it to me?
I posted it in the Discord chat. It's on Vidar's map thread, and you'll probably have to pull up his PDF, the PDF instructions for the map, because his images are down.
Yeah, I see that. On the chat in our chat room, basically.
Yeah.
Correct.
You gotta right click on it. Yeah. Mars Edition. I see it.
No, okay, no, I see. Okay, there we go.
Because Jack, I think you were there for that. Or
bring this.
I remember us talking at ScapeCon East.
Okay,
and I remember kind of like peeking in on this conversation of you guys talking about where to put the 3 hex and how to rearrange the one to collard bush, and it was just like this small corner, and it was like 4 different renditions. Well, we could put it here and put this here and put it with that. Just the 3 hex. You said
it was fulcrum, right?
Yeah, it's on the bottom.
Yeah,
it's thermal or fulcrum Mars edition.
Yeah, hold on a second. Okay, there, we can just bring this up like that. All right. Okay, so
yeah.
So what's the difference for this one?
So
you can't tell. It's so obvious.
Yeah. So the main differences here, and I really don't want to. I don't mean to talk down on the OG Fulcrum so much, but one of the biggest problems about original Fulcrum is that level 3 hex right outside of the start zone. If you look at the original Fulcrum, you'll notice that there is a bush next to that level 3 that covers 2 of those 3 spaces. And that ended up being a very big problem for a lot of ranged armies, because you could just have a pod of 3 figures like 10th Regiment or 4th Mass just chill up there and shoot at your opponents as they're trying to get to you, and that kind of creates unfun gameplay where you're kind of, you're kind of just shifting through that single lane through the middle. You're kind of conga lining all the way through there just to get to that spot, and then at that point they have height, so it's really that spot right there is really good for range. It was one of the bigger problems of the map, and also one of you had mentioned, I think Rogue mentioned that it was good for dragons. Dragons can really just kind of hop up on these rock areas here,
Sure.
and hop between these heights and just kind of shoot at your start zone for free.
Yeah.
Nilfheim, I remember I played a game with Nilfheim on this map during ScapeCon East, and I just had like a free game basically because I was able to plop him there, and any time my opponent made slight progress, they would have to dunk themselves into that water, and I would just get shots of 4 down into those units, and Nilfheim was very safe. So that was a big.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get to, and we talked about dragons being a problem for maps. It is of my opinion that this is one of the easier maps for dragons to abuse.
I can see that. Yeah.
But you know, there are definitely ways to play around it too. You know, this has been a map that's been in the community for years, and people will argue that there are ways to play around that kind of gameplay.
I guess I still like it, but yeah, I can see the little dots, you know, they're just like.
This is where, you know, my idea of what makes a good competitive map good kind of maybe differs from some other people in the community. Is like, it's good if like a map creates interesting gameplay, but I want to recommend maps that are that anyone starting out can kind of understand from looking at them, like what you're supposed to do. And if you're playing on Fulcrum against, like, it's your first time playing on Fulcrum and you're playing against somebody who's played on it like a dozen times,
prepare yourself.
Then you're gonna have a hard time. You're gonna have a quick and a quick loss on that map.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing here. Like, Fulcrum seems like really fun if both players know what to do with Fulcrum. But the map almost takes more of an active role, and you would have to do like a draft style type of army where you're both kind of going in prepared. This is the limitations or what goes wrong with the map, and then it'd be a fun to play around kind of that. But just going in blind, you know, like standard tournament formats just have kind of, you know, bring your army type of deal, and you're just like, oh, I'm a Knight's build. I'm dead. I'm dead.
Yeah, it can be rough for sure.
And I know Hexala has more questions, but I think we have discussed enough tonight just getting started with the map making. So we are going to wind the stream down. There's a lot to discuss, and we could go on forever with this, but we're going to leave that up for future podcasts. But one last question I want to ask Jack, because it brought up with the castles. Is there any competitive map out there that has a lot of castle or castles in it that we can see real quick to wind things down?
Well,
Citadel.
There are a lot of maps that use the castle terrain. There are not a lot of maps that use capped pillars. There's basically no maps in competitive Heroscape that use capped pillars.
My God.
Yeah, because also ladders are very limited. We won't bring that up, but ladders are something that people like to avoid as well. So, cap pillars, ladders. Yeah, they just try to avoid. We don't talk about ladders. So yeah. Oh.
But there are a lot of good maps that use castle terrain. They just don't use the cap pillars. Some of the maps that come to mind.
Yeah, just point something out, and so I can bring a screen here to understand.
So one of my favorite personal maps is the Crypt by Flash 19.
Okay. Let me get this. Okay, I'll just put it up here because I'm sure it's on Heroscape.org here.
Yes.
The Crypt. Oh yeah, okay. Well, see, now that just satisfies my my aesthetically pleasing. Although we can't twirl it around here, but that's nice.
The Crypt is an old favorite of mine. It doesn't get a lot of play today because it is kind of a cramped map, but it is very much. It's a really cool map to see in real life.
Yeah.
And it does give you that feeling of like, oh, you're going into a crypt.
Sure.
And
the claustrophobia of it. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. I like it a lot. Joe mentioned one of my maps, Frostclaw Citadel.
Yeah, let's
yeah,
a second. Is it up here on?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll see it. Okay, yeah, there's a nice. I mean, it's not as claustrophobic, but it still is the same idea here. And I love a map that's got like road tiles to where you can just if you start on it, you can go virtually anywhere. You know, I love that concept.
Yeah, there are a lot of really great fortress maps. I also want to shout out. There's a map by Ulysses called Bayou Blitz that I think is pretty cool. It's not super castle-y, but it does use that.
I don't know how to spell tonight. Okay, there we are. All right. This is more jungly though. This
It is. It's kind of like a sunken kind of fortress vibe. But this is kind of how people use the Fortress of the Archkyrie terrain. They used to make maps with cap pillars, but then they made Protectors of Ular, and Protectors of Ular love capped pillars.
Everything changed when the Protectors attacked.
And then they tried getting around to it by putting molten lava on top of the capped pillars, and then Molten Claw came out. Who, if you don't know, Molten Claw is a dragon, single hex dragon that has lava resistance. And he has a ranged attack. So no cap pillars in today's modern map meta.
Okay. Yeah, that is actually a really interesting point, because I have seen a lot of maps where they would cap it with like the lava tiles, which realistically doesn't make any sense. But sure, I'll play with it for game thematics. But yeah, that is true. I have seen a lot like that, and then I guess with the introduction of Molten Claw, would absolutely break that entire map into two. And so I guess saying no caps, and it's like, you just can't stand on it. It's got those spikes that pigeons can't.
Someone made a 3D model I saw online. Because I hate the uncapped look, just aesthetically. So I probably print a bunch of those off and just put them on from now on.
All right.
I'm definitely used to it at this point, but yeah, I get that.
How about just to end it now, because I know we could go on all night about this, and I'm sure we could, and we would, but we'll save more information for other time, because like I said, we'll have to like divvy out and think of other subjects when it comes to map making.
Or we could have the audience tell us what subjects to talk about, or if we should talk about this again. Let us know. Leave and comment. Tell us.
Comments. Tell us. Okay, what should we talk about next? What are subjects about map making that we'd like to talk about? There's already nice suggestions in the live chat as well. But go ahead and leave a comment below as well to let us know what you think and what you want, and we'll be sure to have that on the list to discuss in the future.